You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing politics this evening because we have none other than Greg Hinz here, who knows a lot of politics. He is the political reporter and the columnist for Crain Chicago Business. He was formerly with Lerner Newspapers, formerly with Chicago Magazine. He is a Medill School of Journalism graduate, the undergraduate level. And he pretty much covers, would it be fair to say, local, state, and national issues for Crain's?
Yes.
Political issues?
It would.
Weekly column, a weekly midweek column, right?
I'll have a print column that comes out in the print edition every Monday, and an internet column that goes out on Wednesdays.
All right, and that's in Crain's. You can
ChicagoBusiness.com.
See, right up top, you see a picture of Greg Hinz. Because of that weekly column that's there, people can buy it on the newsstands on Sundays and read it on Sunday.
Correct.
All right, and they can find it on www.chicagobusiness.com?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, so let's show what you know. I mean,
oh, what a setup.
The election, people are going to be watching this in the suburbs on the week of the 11th and city 18th, unless they happen to see it on publicaffairstv.com or on YouTube, which may be before on the computer. But so they're wondering, looking back, as Greg Hinz really know, can you predict where does it sit between Obama and Clinton, Hillary Clinton, that is, on February 6th, the morning of February 6th?
They're probably going to split the baby, with one or the other perhaps being a little ahead.
Well, give me a percentage of delegates. What's the delegate? What is the delegate count in percentage terms that comes out of February 6th?
About half of what you need to win the nomination.
Are at stake.
Are at
you
stake.
Need 2,025,
Right.
and about 1,000 are at stake.
Right, and the problem, the reason why this is so difficult and why this is probably going to go on a while is the Republicans, most of their states are winner take all. So even if you win Rhode Island or Massachusetts or whatever by one state, you get all their delegates. The Democrats, everything is proportional.
It's proportional. So Rhode Island, if you win by one delegate, you get all. California, you get all.
Correct.
In the Republican Party, Democrats, they allocate it proportionate to the vote.
Yeah, so if you get 15% of the vote, and I think it's fair to say Hillary and Obama are both going to get 15% everywhere, they split the delegates.
So roughly, what's your prediction of the delegate count that comes out of February 5th?
I don't think it's going to, I don't think anybody, I'd be amazed.
55, 45?
Yeah, I'd be amazed if it was much more than that.
All right, so it goes on to March, goes on to April, the battle between Clinton and Obama?
It could, and of course the dream of all of us in the journalism business are like horse races, is that this goes right to the convention floor where they have a big brawl over those delegates from Michigan and Florida that supposedly are not being seated because those states voted early, unlike what the party told them to do.
Right, so you'd like to see it just for entertainment value. You, of course, writing, would you say you're fair and balanced in terms of your coverage that you do politically?
I try to be.
If somebody said, are you a Democrat or Republican, what would you say?
I would say I vote for people in both parties and consider myself an independent as much as anything.
Independent. So you got along, I think the rumor was you got along with Peter Fitzgerald. You, perhaps among all of the Chicago media, he thought were pretty fair. Would that be fair?
I get along with him.
Peter
You have to ask him.
You don't know, okay. So you consider yourself fair and balanced.
I wish. He's got my number. He can call me up tomorrow and give me tips.
Paul Green talks about being the white line down the middle of the road. Does that be Greg Hinz?
No, I think I'm more left to center than right of center.
Left to center. So you're typical for the mainstream media, would you say? In that sense,
I'll let you say that, but
you don't think the mainstream media would be at least lean left, if not far left?
Fox News does a pretty good job of balancing it the other way.
Well, they're the only one, right? Then you got CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, MSNBC. Have I left out anybody? Those all that I just mentioned are on left, and then you have on the other side Fox on the right. So it hardly seems fair or balanced.
My college friends, a good number of them would argue that the media collectively are all in the tank for big money.
You think so? They would think
That's what they would say.
But if you watch that may be they're talking about the corporate people who run it. I'm talking about the news anchors like Katie Couric, Brian Williams, Chris Matthews, just to give you some flavor. Wolf Blitzer, those guys aren't in the tank for big business, are they?
No, but that's what my friends would argue, that
okay.
collectively are. Let me answer your question this way before we change. If you want objectivity, watch a lot of shows, read a lot of newspapers, read a lot of magazines.
Provide your own balance.
Yeah, the truth is always somewhere in between.
State's Attorney of Cook County, 6 candidates running in the Democratic primary. Predictions. The winner is?
You were talking beforehand. This one is a little difficult to pick because the presidential race has sucked
You'll
all
have
the
to give all
oxygen
the
out.
qualifiers on this show. We
Of
only
course
got
I do.
28 minutes. Just give me an answer.
Of course I do. Brookins is probably the guy to beat.
Okay, so if it's Parika v. Brookins in the general election in the fall, how does that come out? Tony Parika, of course, is the Republican nominee, and he has an uncontested primary, so if Brookins is the Democratic nominee, it will be Parika v. Brookins.
State's attorney is the one local race which over the last 30 or 40 years at the county level, Republicans have been able to break through on because it's law enforcement and people look at it
Chaco
a little
Valley
more
was last
seriously.
there, and he won in what, 90 in a special election and re-election in
I
92?
think that's right.
He lost in 96 to Devine.
But the county has steadily become more Democratic. It looks to me to be a Democratic year. It will be difficult for Mr. Parika to strike through, even if his own party was united behind him, which it isn't.
All right, so you're going with Brookins in that race in terms of predicting who wins.
I think he would be the initial favorite.
That would be Alderman Howard Brookins Jr. If it turns out that Larry Suffredin, say, is there any other candidate who you think Parika could be who might come out of the primary, like Suffredin or Alvarez or Tom Allen?
Suffredin probably is the closest.
Because he's a lakefront liberal?
No, because
He's a lakefront lobbyist?
no, because he's better known. He has a lot of money. He has a lot of friends.
Suffredin.
Yes,
So you're saying Suffredin would be the hardest for Parika to beat?
I think in the Democratic primary, Suffredin probably comes in second.
Right, but if Suffredin does win the primary, I'm saying, and he's facing Parika win, or does Suffredin win that race as well?
I think probably any Democrat would be favored to beat any Republican.
Okay. Let's go over to a race that is of interest, the 14th Congressional District race. There are 4 Democrats lining up in that primary to take that seat, which is now an open seat that has been held by former Speaker Denny Hastert for 21 years. He has actually stepped down, so it's an interesting election in that the primary on February 5th will determine the Democratic and Republican nominees for a special election in March, so somebody gets an edge to be an incumbent for the fall election.
Right.
So people are voting, you know, what we say in Cook County, vote early and often. You actually get to vote twice, legit, if you're voting in the 14th Congressional District. I mean, people vote 2 or 3 times all the time in Cook County in the same race, right?
Of course.
All right, so who wins that? What happens? 14th Congressional District, Democrat or Republican, and the Democrat primary. Make a prediction.
It's a horse race. On the Republican side, you have 2 really good candidates running. Jim Oberweis seems to have more money, has the former Speaker's support, but Chris Lausen, conservative,
Grassroots. So who wins? Make a prediction.
probably Oberweis.
All right, Democratic side, you got Foster, you got Jotham Stein, you got, who am I leaving out? John Lush, who was the candidate last time for the Democrats.
Foster
against
appears to certainly has the most money. Seems to have gotten his message out a little bit better.
So you're predicting Foster v. Oberweis in the March election?
That would appear to be most likely at this
And
point.
the winner is?
The winner is probably going to be Oberweis, but I think the real race here isn't so much in the special election; it's in the fall.
Why is it more? Why does it possibly come out differently in the fall?
Turnout.
The Obama factor, if he's on the ballot.
If Obama is heading the ticket, you're going to have a huge turnout of Democrats in that district. The district still tilts Republican, although it's becoming Hispanic quickly. I think that potentially makes a difference.
And even if it's Hillary Clinton on the ballot, the nominee in the fall, it's still getting a turnout because it's a presidential turnout, so the Democratic Party gets more turnout in the fall.
Yeah, you have 2-3 times the turnout potentially.
So if Hillary Clinton's the nominee, do you think the Dems win that?
I think it's worth watching real close.
Okay. 10th Congressional District race, we tape up in Skokie, we're just out of the 10th. 10th goes through the North Shore, starting with Wilmette and then Kenilworth and Winnetka and Glencoe and Highland Park, and going north almost all the way to the border to Wisconsin and the areas northwest of there, Bannockburn, Northfield, so forth. Pretty affluent area. Mark Kirk has held that seat. won in a close race in 2000. He's held that seat now for 8 years. Democrats have a primary, Jay Footlick and Dan Seals. Seals ran last time. Seals wins, right?
Probably.
Name recognition, just too tough to. Guy is a reasonable candidate, does well. It's really hard to unseat them. He's almost an incumbent in that race, right?
Name recognition and money.
Okay. So, Seals v. Kirk in the fall, who wins?
I think that Seals had a good shot at Kirk last time.
And he lost 53-47. And the Democratic
Caught him napping. If he'd gotten some of the money that went into the 6th district race with Peter Roscom and Tammy, it might have made a difference. This time, Mark Kirk is a really smart politician who knows what it means to be a moderate Republican. He's been very careful to isolate himself from some of the positions his party's taken in Congress. He created quite a stir about a year ago when he and some other moderate Republicans went to see the president to talk about Iraq policy, got all kinds of coverage. It will be difficult, I think, for Seals to beat that kind of responsiveness in him, unless, again, Barack Obama's at the head of the ticket. If Barack's on the ticket, all bets are off.
Hillary doesn't do it. You're saying Kirk still wins. If Hillary's on the top of the ticket.
I think he's the favorite.
All right. The 11th. People don't know too much about that. Tell us a little bit about where it is and what's going on.
The 11th is one of these kind of spaghetti districts that we got in the last remap. It sprawls all over the place. It starts in the south suburbs of Chicago and runs almost all the way to the Mississippi River at one point. I mean, it's really...
Jerry Weller is a Republican, has been there for quite a while. He's stepping down. It's an open seat. He had some would say, bad things that people were talking about, may have poisoned the well a little bit for Republicans. Is that true?
He did some things that raised some eyebrows.
Right.
No need to kick him around on the way out.
But it has been a Republican district. Do the Democrats have a reasonable shot at it?
Yes. Most of the political pros would tell you that if the Democrats are going to pick up a seat in this state in this cycle, this is probably their best opportunity. Partially because of what Mr. Weller has done, partially because Debbie Halverson, the Democratic nominee state senator, is very well known there, and in some ways just fits the profile of what you want a candidate to do.
Is she too liberal for that district? I mean, she's a pretty left-leaning, not left-leaning, she's a pretty left state senator, right?
If I were the Republicans, that's exactly the case I would make against her. I'm not familiar with every detail of her record. She certainly was the top aide to Emil Jones down in Springfield, which won't help her. I suspect that Emil is going to turn out to be the guy the Republicans really run against there rather than Debbie Halverson. But she's a pretty good politician, has a lot of roots in that area, and is going to have some success being able to parrot that.
Democrat and Republicans have 3 candidates in the primary. It looks like New Lenox Mayor Tim Balderman would be the favorite.
He's certainly the best known.
So if it's Balderman v. Halverson, how's it come out?
Good race. Depending on the national climate, perhaps a slight edge to the Dems.
Okay. 6th race, Roscom holds on there no matter who the nominee. Looks like it's going to be Jill Morgenthaler for the Democrats. An easy race for Peter Roscom to keep.
Certainly a lot easier than last time.
He won by 2 points last time, but now he's the incumbent. Big difference.
Right. He's incumbent. People know him. He's got a record. He's got money. Helps a lot.
He wins, right?
It would. He's the favorite.
Okay. So for the prediction for president, going back just again, so you're saying on February 5th, in Illinois, certainly Barack wins in Illinois, right?
Yes.
It goes forward.
Yes. As
we march toward the nomination, give me some odds. What are the chances that Barack Obama is the Democratic nominee for president of the United States?
Oh, I think I go back and forth day by day, to be honest with you. One day I think Barack's ahead a little bit. The next day I think Hillary Clinton is ahead a little bit.
So it's that close. You're saying it's 2-1 or 2-1 and pick 'em?
It is. This has become a really good contest. Strategists on both sides say they expect this to go in March, maybe April, with some potentiality that could go beyond that. Very tight.
What is the magic of Barack Obama? Here's a guy who was a state senator for 8 years. He came in with a lot of hoopla. He gave the keynote speech in July of 2004 before he was elected. he had an opponent, Jack Ryan, running against him on the Republican side for the U.S. Senate. It seemed like it might be a good matchup. Jack Ryan, a very attractive guy, fairly thoughtful in terms of hope, growth, and opportunity type things. Not exactly glib, not glib in the same sense Obama was. Had that problem with sex clubs, at least
Right.
the media raised it. The Republican Party, would it be fair to say the Republican Party leaders kind of deserted Jack Ryan? They maybe were glad to see this maverick out of the way?
If you would, if the picture of a guy with the wheel tracks all over his back on the ground is deserting, yeah, they deserted him.
So Edgar and Shalander and Topinka kind of ganged up and kind of kicked this guy out, right? And
Well,
then
they claim he wasn't honest with them. I wasn't there, but yes, there was a quick and rapid separation.
Slight distraction. They brought in Keyes, which was a major league disaster. So, in other words, he had no race. The thing about Obama, it's interesting to point out, is people don't realize when he first ran for state senate in the Democratic primary in '96, that's when you run in your race. He doesn't have really Republican opposition. It's one of those completely Democratic districts. He knocked every other opponent off the ballot. So he ran essentially unopposed in the primary, right?
For the state senate,
State Senate.
Yeah.
So he had no election, no race there. He ran against Bobby Rush and lost. He had this major victory in the Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate in 2004 when he knocked out people like Dan Hinz, won by almost 30 points, when people thought Hinz would be, if not exactly the most charismatic guy, at least have a machine behind him. Blair Hull, $39 million, he beat that. So that was one race he won, but essentially the next race, when Barack Obama won the Iowa caucuses, that essentially was the second election that Barack Obama ever won in his life, right?
Well, I mean, he did win the state senate seat.
Well, he was unopposed. I mean, it's not really a contest.
Yeah, those things don't just happen now.
So you're saying that Obama has really got, let me ask you, and then I'll chime in. What is the magic about Obama? Because I think we've kind of stumbled on.
I think all the polls and I think the sense of the political establishment right now is that Americans aren't very happy about the state of the nation by and large.
Change, that would be the big word?
We've got stuck in this war that doesn't seem to end. The economy's fallen apart.
Well, falling apart would be a little, we don't even know if we're in a recession yet, let alone
Not in great
apart.
shape. Not in great shape.
Well, first month we've had a decline in jobs. You say falling apart. You're at a business magazine. Is that what Crain thinks?
I think Crain thinks that the economy's not in very good shape right now.
All right, but falling apart.
My IRA would say that, so would yours.
But falling apart, All right. Okay,
On the verge of falling
I
apart.
interrupted. Sorry. So the war goes on.
So people aren't happy and they want change, and here Barack Obama comes and he presents himself as an agent of change, and he does it by not coming across as a hyper-partisan like Hillary Clinton sometimes does. I'm going to smash him, I'm going to beat him, but I'm going to take us to the promised land where we're all going to get together and rally about these kinds of changes that we can agree on and actually accomplish something.
We all hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
To a
Barack
degree,
Obama.
which is what, and that's, she has tried to come back and suggest that, hey, you can't really believe all this. It's a nice dream, but it's not quite real.
Right.
But right now, it has sunk in quite successfully, particularly with certain parts of the electorate, younger people, for instance.
This Krauthammer, who's not exactly spending a lot of time analyzing Democrats, more of a conservative, but I think he did hit on something when he said the Democratic Party had three choices in the primary. You had Hillary Clinton, the candidate of experience change. You had John Edwards, the candidate of angry change. And you had Barack Obama, the candidate of hopeful change. Is that it, sort of? I mean, hope, really, that's hope, change, all those little nice words. Is David Axelrod basically engineering this presidency?
Oh, no, I think...
Barack can do this all on his own?
Well,
I mean, all this stuff
nobody
about hope and...
Nobody can be president on their own, but what Mr. Obama is saying now is very consistent with what he's been saying ever since he started running for the Senate. I think a lot of people will remember his keynote speech to the Democratic Convention 4 years ago. And in many ways, to be honest, he's very reminiscent of Ronald Reagan, of a change in direction wrapped around a nice sunny persona.
Although Reagan, at that time, when he was running, had been governor of a very large state, California, for 2 terms.
Fair point.
Right. So
Fair point.
There is that.
But the way the message
And he had-
resonates is similar.
And Reagan, for decades, had been putting out the Republican message of strong defense, of free enterprise. When he was doing it, what was the GE Theater or something like that? So he wasn't a politician. But Obama, you got to admit, has been doing this a pretty short time.
He has, but he seems to have this little bit of magic that some politicians come up with once in a while.
Yeah, and is it that the country is almost looking for and ready to embrace an African-American family that is intact as their first family? This is one of the few times, well, this is the first time in perhaps the American history, in which it's probably a major advantage for a thoughtful, well-spoken, intelligent candidate like Barack Obama to actually be African-American. It's an advantage.
That is a good question, and we're going to have to wait and see all the election totals before we find out whether that is indeed the case or not. There's an argument to be made that some of his opponents tried to play a racial card early in the primary process. It didn't work in South Carolina, but then in Nevada, the next state up,
It may have worked.
it may have worked by pushing away Hispanics. We're going to
And
have
when
to
you
see.
say his opponents, it was Bill Clinton who was out there playing the race card, right?
Well, it was some of the Clinton apparatus people.
Well, no, it was
Bill Clinton was a little late to the game. Some other people said some stuff earlier in the game.
Right, so the Clinton apparatus was out there getting out the word, so if somebody didn't notice it, this guy's African American, they were pitching the remainder. They weren't pitching South Carolina when they were saying. They were pitching Nevada, they were pitching February 5th. They were pitching states in which it may be a detriment not to be white.
Yeah, and we'll see if, to the extent that card was played, we'll see how it ends up playing.
Yeah, so you would hope if you're, whether you're conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican, you would hope the American people would come down on the side of their better angels and actually embrace, if not vote on based on race, but embrace somebody who's African American. That picture, you saw that. You were probably in Springfield when he announced he was running for president February 5th. First time you really saw the Obama family. 2 young kids, wife, picture-perfect family these days, African American. And his only wife, his only family. Somewhat unusual these days when you had Rudy Giuliani on his third, you know. I mean, you could also say Hillary's only had one husband too.
You could say that.
All right, so I mean, but that image was important, don't you think? African American intact family. Am I making too much of that?
I think that the family image resonates clearly. To what extent people are going to vote for him or against him because he's black, I just don't know.
Is a plus. Look, he's a new, I don't know how to say this, but I'll say it anyway. There's a new generation of African Americans who, in terms of style, in terms of speech, in terms of their substantive knowledge, are quite different from the old generation. Congressman Jesse Jackson, Cory Booker, I think, in Jersey City, Harold Ford in Tennessee, and Barack Obama. These folks are quite different than John Stroger, Todd Stroger, et cetera, right?
Well, there's a generational change, I think, that occurs between folks who have to break the ice and have to really fight the super tough battles and force their way into the room at all, and people who come into it 20 or 30 years later with a certain status and a certain openness assumed. It makes you a different person. You act a little bit differently.
Okay, and the last thing, I mean, I might say that the thing about Obama is really one of the best combinations I've seen of people in terms of politics and political instincts, and also a good understanding of public policy, whether you agree with him or not. And it's often people are good on public policy but crummy on politics or vice versa. Would you agree? This guy's pretty good at both.
He is pretty good at some stuff on public policy, but he's just frankly starting to get his feet wet and get known on a lot of areas that where we have to judge.
A little too vague. I mean, that's criticism has been lobbed at him. He's too vague.
Well,
it doesn't have the details that Hillary has.
It's early. I think you'll see him fill in those lines.
Talking all this time about let's balance it out a little bit with the Republicans. We'll have to get Mr. Hinz back to do the state issues, which we contemplate doing, but let's do a little bit on the Republicans. They're of somewhat interest. Romney easily wins, would you say, through February 5th, and Romney collapses, or does it go on further?
As of today, McCain clearly appears to hold the upper hand.
somehow he did it. Maybe it was because too many conservatives were splitting the ticket. This guy who's not popular with conservatives is going to be the Republican nominee for president of the United States. This maverick, this guy who opposed Bush tax cuts, opposed the conservative view on immigration, supports McCain-Feingold, supports McCain-Kennedy on immigration, probably on education. This guy who's almost, the conservatives would say, is not a Republican.
I think in a year when just about every other person running comes across as a classic politician, you got Mitt Romney, who holds 15 positions on everything. You got Rudy Giuliani, whose personal life was an uproar. You have the Clintons on the other side. John McCain comes across as a sincere man of principle who you can trust to do what he says, even if you don't agree with what he says.
All right, so he's 72. He'll be 72 when he's running for president. If he is, Obama would be 47, maybe 48, a quarter of a century difference.
A little bit of a difference.
Is age become a major factor if it's McCain v. Obama for president?
Yeah, I think it does. How big of a factor, depending on how well he comports himself. But I'm not 72. I can only guess at what it's like to be. I hope I get there someday.
Could he use that Reagan line when he said to Mondale he's not going to use the youth and inexperience of his opponent and make that an issue?
He could. I kind of prefer his own line, though, about meeting my 98-year-old mom if you think I'm fast.
99,
yeah.
95,
99.
Something like that. She's up there.
But I think people want their leader to look strong and full of energy and vigorous, and that's going to be a challenge for him, particularly compared to if it's Obama.
So if you had to predict right now, McCain v. Obama wins?
I can't pick.
You're not going to do that?
No.
McCain v. Hillary, you pick that one?
No, it gets 6 months out.
Okay. We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Hinz, who is a columnist and the political columnist and reporter for Crain Chicago Business. Thanks so much for coming.
Welcome, sir.
All right, got a few minutes left. You wrote briefly in the Crain's February 4th edition. You talked about if Obama does succeed and become the presidential nominee, well, the president, I guess he doesn't have to give up his senatorship unless he becomes president or he's appointed, he's nominated for vice president. But if either of those happens, there's a vacancy and Rod Blagojevich gets to fill it. You're predicting what? He goes to Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky as the nominee, or as the person to replace Obama, fill out his term for the
I don't know if he goes there, but she certainly seems to be campaigning for it. I talked to her, and she has conceded that if the seat's available, so am I. I'm interested.
And she's close with Rod Blagojevich. She's never been somebody to criticize him for all this public corruption that surrounds him. She hasn't been.
Correct.
She hasn't been doing that.
And
right?
she's kind of philosophically, she comes from the same wing of the party as he does.
Far left.
Populist, they would
wing?
say. Populist, they would say.
Well, even Jan would agree she's a liberal, right?
She would call herself progressive.
She wouldn't say she's a liberal? She doesn't even Jan doesn't want to use that term anymore? My God.
No, you guys on the right have pretty well muddied it up. So they call them progressive.
Wait a second. What do you mean, my guys? This is the first Fair and Balanced show you've seen in but you're used to hanging out with Carol Maureen on Channel 11, Joel Weissman, Eddie Arusa, Phil Ponce, Elizabeth Barrett. I mean, is there anybody in Channel 11? You know this station, WTTW. Anybody who you'd call actually fair?
I've never looked at their hard cards. I have no idea how they vote.
You give me a break. You don't have any idea how Carol Maureen votes?
Nope, never looked.
Have you ever heard her talk in any way that suggests she's anything other than fair? I don't mean to pick on Carol, but that whole station, they wouldn't know a conservative.